Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Brad Feakes. I'm the president of Estes Group. And in celebration of Estes Group's 20th anniversary, we're conducting a series of interviews with some of the friends and colleagues that we've met along the way. And my guest today is Sarah Scudder. Now, Sarah, she's a mover, a shaker, and a podcast maker in the world of supply chain management. And she stands at an intersection of two unique disciplines, that of marketing on the one side and supply chain on the other. And Sarah and I, we had an opportunity to talk last year on one of her many podcasts. And I was really impressed by how she went in some unexpected directions. And we ended up covering several topics and areas that went well beyond the normal day-to-day business chit-chat. And so with that today, I wanted to do something similar, sit down with Sarah and discuss her life and her career and some of the lessons learned along the way. And with that, welcome, Sarah. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I am joining from the Bay Area today, and we've had a bit of an Armageddon storm.
Oh, dear.
Power outages, trees falling, so it looks a little bit crazy outside, but I have power, so we should be good to go.
That's a great thing. The apocalypse comes quickly when it does come.
Well, and it's like the weather will be fine, and then 3 minutes later, it's like a total windstorm, crazy rain. There was massive flooding in Southern California. So
Right.
very, very thankful to live on the top of a hill this week.
Nice. That's good. And besides, a long, slow apocalypse would make for a very long movie, unless you're doing like a limited series, like maybe The Last of Us. More than 3 hours, people are asleep before
Exactly.
before the vaccine comes. So that said, tell me a little bit about your background in California, how you prepared for the career that you had. Now, looking at your resume, the double major in business administration and economics, it would seem to prepare you both for a career in marketing and supply chain. But when we've talked, your story takes a more interesting turn. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I had no plans to go in supply chain and procurement. I think the time when I was in school, it wasn't a cool, hip thing. There wasn't even really a supply chain or procurement major at the time. So I went to a little tiny school in Northern California called Sonoma State University, which is in the middle of wine country and had maybe 4,000 undergraduates. So again, a very, very small school. And I was planning to go into the fashion industry. So I picked a degree in business because I thought that just logically made the most sense for fashion. So I was planning to work for a company that produced fashion shows when I graduated, and then potentially was going to open my own runway production company. Now, I had done runway modeling and mannequin modeling in high school. So that's kind of where I developed a little bit of my passion from. But modeling is a very, very brutal career. By the time you're 25 or 30, you're old news and your career's over. So I knew I wanted to go more into the business side of it. So my junior year, I was president of my sorority, Alpha Gamma Delta. If we have any sorority or fraternity people on the call today, what? And I was finishing my presidency and decided kind of my last hurrah for my sorority was to co-host a big fundraising event that we did every year for diabetes research. So my girlfriend and I volunteered. We said, yep, we'll go ahead and help execute and put on the event. Raised the most money we ever actually had in the history of the event, donated the money. Well, I was a double major and a minor, and so I had a really busy schedule. And I had no experience sourcing or procuring anything. And by putting on this event, we had to procure a lot of different marketing related things. So think media, think print, think apparel, think swag, direct mail. Well, I didn't really have any knowledge nor the bandwidth to go out and learn to do it. So I hired a local company that was based in Rohnert Park, which is where my school was, and said, hey, can you guys help execute and manage all the marketing things that we need to go out and source and procure. So they took care of it, did a really good job. After the event, they approached me and said, would you want to come work for us? We're in a very male-dominated industry. We want younger people. We want more females. We'd like to work with someone who knows the university in case we want to do some sort of internship program. And, we think you might kind of have a knack for sales and marketing. So in my mind, I'm thinking, I barely know how to spell procurement, and it sounds kind of boring and stodgy and completely a different planet from fashion. But I took some time and really thought about my skill set and where I wanted to take my career. And I realized that I thought I could learn a lot from working for a small company where I'd be able to come in and work and learn about all different aspects of running a business versus working for a larger company and being more tunneled into a specific role or function. So I took the job. Right after I graduated, I started and I spent the first part of my career in a sales role. So I was actually going out to market and selling marketing procurement software. So the company that I worked for sold software into marketing procurement. And it was a platform that allowed people to source and procure and manage suppliers for anything that was related to marketing. So that might be packaging, that might be swag, that might be apparel, that might be print. So it was a software play, but through buying the software, people were procuring and buying all these different types of products and services. So the company I was at was called Golden Pacific Systems. We were acquired by a company called the Sourcing Group. Sourcing Group was East Coast based, had 3 offices. They were looking to expand their presence on the West Coast. We had 2 offices, so it was kind of like a logical acquisition for them. So I stayed on after the acquisition about 4 years as well. So I was in marketing procurement for quite a long time. I think I was there about 12 years total. And as I advanced my sales career and moved more into a sales leadership role, one of the things I realized was the cold calling, cold outbounding motion seemed a little bit archaic to me.
Mm.
And the idea of randomly calling somebody while they're, eating lunch or working on another project didn't seem very logical to me, because if you're catching somebody off guard and they have no need or interest in your product, it can be annoying and not the most efficient. So I said, there's got to be a better way for us to get our content in front of people that potentially have a need, so they know about us. So when they are ready to buy marketing procurement software, they think of our company. So I started studying all the socials, and I found that our buyers were on LinkedIn more than any other social platform at the time. So I committed to teaching myself how to use LinkedIn. And then I spent time interviewing and really, really getting to know our persona, the person we were selling to. And I started writing content and posting it on LinkedIn. And I did a self-imposed 90-day trial where I posted one piece of content that I myself wrote or produced every single day. So that includes weekends. So I was doing literally every weekday and weekend. And the results were astounding. We started getting qualified inbound. So people actually reaching out to us and coming inbound versus us having to be doing a cold calling and cold email outbound motion. And that really changed the trajectory of my career. I said, I love this. I want more of this. And so I started teaching myself about marketing and go-to-market strategy and how to build a demand gen engine. And then the CEO and founder of SourceDay reached out to me in 2021 and said, hey, we're looking to hire a CMO. We'd like somebody to build out our marketing team and build out our go-to-market strategy. Would you be interested? And I said, absolutely yes. One, because I thought a lot of potential in the product that the company was selling, but it would also give me direct experience. I come from the indirect side, and I wanted to really get that direct experience as well, and also get to learn more about the manufacturing space and how manufacturing supply chains worked. So I joined SourceDay October of 2021 and was there just under 2.5 years, just finished my time with them at the end of 2023. So that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question of me getting into supply chain, starting on the indirect side, and now being on the direct side.
Right. And let's dive a little deeper into that whole concept of direct and indirect. 2 very different worlds, I would imagine. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the commonalities and some of the differences between those 2 sides of the coin?
Yeah, so indirect is sourcing and procuring all the things that your company needs to operate. So a good example would be financial services. Really, anything a financial services companies buys is indirect because they're not manufacturing or producing any product. The direct materials side is when you are sourcing and procuring things that directly go in an end product that you're selling. So what do I have with me? So this is my band that I use for working out, where I hold my cell phone. Anything that's directly in this band is considered a direct purchase because the company is actually selling this product directly. Well, this company, though, still needs to buy things like contingent labor, real estate, marketing, office supplies. So those would all be considered direct or indirect purchases, versus anything that's directly going in the product would be considered a direct purchase.
Mhm. Excellent, excellent. And from a supply standpoint, do you need to approach those two areas differently from a procurement level? Is there a
Oh my
different set of?
goodness, yes. They're completely different. So when you're on the indirect side, it is very, very stakeholder driven. So the stakeholders or the business line owners have a lot of authority and autonomy to go out and select their suppliers and make purchases. And it can be very, very challenging if you're on the procurement team to go and win over the stakeholders enough for them to come and work with you, to have you help them throughout the selection process. Often what happens is I'm a stakeholder, I've already selected, I'm going to use this supplier, I've already handled the negotiation myself, and then the stakeholder will hand you the agreement and says, please sign this and execute it.
Hmm.
So that can be very tough for procurement. So the key focus in that world is you want to spend as much time as you can winning over your internal stakeholders and gaining their trust so they come and work with you throughout the sourcing process versus just coming to at the very end when the contract is ready to be executed. And it's kind of the wild west on the indirect side. A lot of spend is not under management, which means stakeholders are just completely doing their own thing,
Mhm.
and it's not being managed and monitored by procurement. So in that world, it's a lot about relationship building, relationship management, knowing how to sell internally to your own team, and then how to keep your stakeholders happy so they continuously are coming back to work with you. So that's a big part of it. On the direct side, very, very different. The direct spend has super high visibility from the C-suite. It's typically pretty mature, and there's a solid process and system in place. The spend is closely monitored and managed, and there's just a ton of visibility. So procurement, I would say, is often more tactical on the direct side because you already have your suppliers established, you already have contracts established. You're just making sure that your parts and materials are arriving on time. So I would say more creative and more less strategic on the indirect side. But on the direct side, you are spending a lot more time on supplier relationships and supplier management.
Gotcha, gotcha. You know, funny you talked about the need to get management and procurement together on those big deals. I think about when I was working for a customer of an ERP system, and we went through the selection process of the ERP. And we ran just into that where we had gone through the selection, picked the system, negotiated a price with the software vendor, and then handed it over to the procurement department to cut the PO. And then the procurement department was, wait, no, we need to discuss terms. And so we extended the project another 2 months as procurement beat up the vendor for the purchase agreement, the terms, et cetera. And by the time the project kicked off, we were not only behind the ball, but we also had an angry vendor now who had just been kind of kicked twice by two different departments because internally we hadn't sunk that up. So I can see entirely how the need to have internally well connected processes can avoid that kind of disaster internally.
And Brad, I'll call out something you said. You said vendor. I prefer the word supplier.
Mm,
So supplier means more strategic, more collaborative. To me, vendor is much more transactional. So when I'm speaking about supplier relationships and supplier management programs, you always hear me use the word supplier.
nice, nice. Yes, in the ERP term, we never like our ERP vendors, so we use the term vendor. So It's intentional. I remember what that same vendor once said to me. They used to have a vendor master, and they renamed it the supplier master. And they say, well, vendors sell you hot dogs. And then, well, us database types, so why is it still called the vendor table? And it was a long and painful discussion, but I get you there. So let me talk a little bit about your supply background and how you kind of converted into going from supply into systems. Now, when we first talked last year, we were talking a lot about best of breed systems and systems that can help optimize ERP-based systems. So I myself, I come much more from the direct world where systems are established to try and handle supply, MRP-based systems, purchase suggestion systems, et cetera, that run on nightly routines, and you have part master files, et cetera. And at times customers come to us and they have problems with the settings of the system, and they feel like a system is more of an encumbrance to successful sourcing than it is a boon. So tell me about how that interplay between sourcing and systems, and how companies can best leverage technology to solve their sourcing problems.
Yeah, so to me, when you say sourcing, that means I'm going out and I am searching for suppliers, and I'm then going to do some sort of selection process
Mhm.
around that short list of suppliers that I've created. So the sourcing process is very much about research and then vetting suppliers. That may be going physically to their facilities, that may be making sure that they have certain certifications in place. That may mean that they have certain financials. So that's what, when you say sourcing, that's a really, really
Mhm.
big piece of it, is getting that. And something that really happened during COVID was people had to do more sourcing to find alternative suppliers,
Mhm.
because manufacturers would have a very, very important part or something in the end product that they were selling, and that one supplier may not be able to produce or may have been shut down during COVID. So the sourcing process really, really kicked into play because all of these organizations needed to go out and find additional suppliers to add to their network. So if something happened with their main supplier, they have alternatives and backups ready to go.
Right.
So that's what I envision when you're saying that.
Mhm.
On the system side, that's where you're leveraging technology, people, and process. You can never just buy technology alone and have it work. The people and the process are just as or more important as the actual technology. But the systems piece is making sure that you have the right technology in place with the right people and the right process to automate as much as possible. One of the things that still shocks me is I speak to buyers and procurement practitioners almost daily. How many people still rely on Excel to
Mhm.
do so much in their supply chain? They may have an MRP, they may have an ERP, they may have other software, but they're so reliant on more manual processes that opens up your entire supply chain to quite a bit of risk. If the spreadsheet breaks, if there's a formula that's wrong, if something's fat fingered, that can really impact an entire supply chain by having the wrong data for your planning for your purchase orders. And that can really have a ripple effect all the way from first mile to last mile in your supply chain. So the systems is going out and finding the right software that you can implement that's going to automate a lot of the manual work and give you visibility into every step of the supply chain. When you don't have visibility, you don't know if there's an issue, and therefore you can't prepare and pivot before it becomes too late.
Mhm. Nice, nice. Well, let's shift a little bit to the topic of kind of marketing within the context of supply chains. Now, when I researched your background, and you've kind of attested to this yourself with your ongoing written word publishing, with all the flashy marketing techniques, it seems that basic written word still has a ton of value. Tell me a little bit about the value of the written word within the context of marketing, whether it's services or products that is your bailiwick.
Yeah, so As I mentioned earlier, started in sales, transitioned into marketing. And one of the things that I think is most important about effective marketing is being a storyteller.
Mm.
And that means interviewing and spending as much time as you can with your customers, with prospects, with people that fall within your persona, and really, really, really getting to know what it's like to be them and live in their world. And then taking that intel and that information and writing stories from it that you can share out publicly across multiple channels, which then will resonate with people that you're trying to get in front of to potentially buy your product or service. So the storytelling piece is it's really, really important. And I think it's something that organizations miss when you are reading something and it sounds like corporate fluff, or oh, that's so boring, or that sounds like a robot, or that was like AI generated. It's because you're missing that human element and the person and the face behind what you're trying to communicate. So from a perspective of the written word, I think content is essential and so important today. And with all the advancements in marketing, there's what's called an integrated campaign strategy, where you can take a piece of content and share it across multiple channels. So that may be sharing it across multiple social channels. That could be X, that could be Facebook, that could be Insta, that could be LinkedIn. That could be doing a paid program where you're running some paid ads. That could be email. That could be podcast interviews, webinars. So there's so many different things that you can do, where you can take that content and that storytelling and distribute it across multiple channels based on where your buyers are going to consume information. And that's really, really important. I am shocked sometimes when I speak to marketers and they've never spoken to a customer before.
Mm.
And it's like, how are you even doing marketing if you're not even speaking to your customer and understanding their pain points and where they're going to consume information? So if your customers are on TikTok, but yet you're spending all of your time producing content on LinkedIn, there's a miss. Or if you're spending all of your time on Insta, but your customers are consuming information on LinkedIn, there's a miss. So written word is very, very important. It's important to have the right channel and distribution strategy to get the content in front of the right people at the right time.
Right, right. This was funny this was almost 10 years ago when I was researching EstesGroup as an organization at the time that I was just about to join. I was trying to see what their footprint was like, and their marketing individual at the time, I think, had an Instagram account in EstesGroup's name and got that mixed up with her own private account. So after a while, she just started following nail provider and hair and stuff. And I started getting real, questionable vibes of what company am I working for here? Did I sign up for the wrong company? But we sorted that out quickly. But I was not in need of a manicure as much as might have been in due diligence, but we avoided that, fortunately. Now let's talk a little bit about. So we talked about direct and indirect, and this sort of overlaps, but there's some cross overlap as well, I guess. And that's the idea of services versus product marketing. So Estes, we're a service company. We work and provide services for basically product companies, distributors, manufacturers. They are folks that are delivering products that could be either direct or indirect. They're in support of other organizations, get consumed in one form or fashion, either as part of direct product or as stuff that just keeps the business running. Do you see differences when you're trying to market a service that you provide versus a product that you deliver?
So in full transparency, I've never marketed services in what you're calling like full on consulting services,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I don't have direct experience, but I can tell you from the experience I have, it's very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are selling services, for instance, in the ERP consulting space, it's much more about the human and the person. So the consultant, for example, matters a lot. So Brad, if I'm going to hire your company and you're going to provide temp labor, or you're going to manage an implementation that may last a year, for example, the people behind the face and behind the brand matter a lot as to who's going to be assigned to the account, who's actually going to be executing the work. So when you're messaging, you're going to be talking about the people, about their experience, about their credibility, right? That matters a lot. When you're marketing a product, in my world, that's procure tech or procurement SaaS or something in the ERP space, you're going to be talking about functionality. You're going to be talking about value and the future state. So how is the person that you're speaking to going to benefit from your platform or what you're selling? And then what is their life going to look like after implementation? How are you going to make their life easier? How are you going to save them money? All storytelling is relevant and important to both, and having a human and a face behind it important to both. But what you're talking about and how you're messaging, I think, is definitely different.
Interesting. Interesting. So let's talk a little bit, speaking of marketing, let's talk about specific markets. I'm thinking of the millennial market. Now, when I started preparing for this interview, I saw you had written several times on the evolving millennial market. And so I had an interesting thought about how that market has changed over time as it's matured, as it's grown up, as it's encountered different challenges. Do you see a big change in marketing to the next generation versus the generation of your own? And how does that marketing shift over time, I guess?
Yeah, so I'm 40, so I'm on the very upper end of the millennial group. So I barely fit into that market. And I would say when I was starting out my career as a millennial, I think there was it was a struggle for supply chain and procurement organizations because they weren't used to marketing to such procurement or technology focused people. So marketing to somebody like me when I started my career, I want the sexy user interface. I want the AI. I want easy. So that I noticed being on the other end of it that people were struggling and kind of selling more old school systems and an old school marketing in an old school way. I think now that I'm, quote, old, more progressed in my career, now I'm selling into a younger generation, as you mentioned. I think it's very, very different. One, attention spans are so much shorter.
What did you say? Never mind.
So, the days of producing a 25-page white paper, good luck getting somebody to read that. So the way that you produce content needs to be short form. So maybe a 30-second video or a minute video, or if you're doing a LinkedIn post, you're going to do a carousel with lots of pictures. So not too much content, not too content heavy, at least for some of the initial awareness pieces, or people, you'll lose them and you won't keep their attention. Charts and graphs, if you're talking about data, I think very important versus just writing heavy chunks of paragraphs and expecting somebody to consume that, versus having a couple themes that you're trying to communicate or talk about, again, and using graphs to support that. And UX UI, I think, is just essential and one of the most important things in 2024. If your product doesn't come across as being simple and easy to use, you're going to have a really, really hard time selling into the younger generation. They are used to Insta. They are used to TikTok. They are used to Amazon, where they can go in, figure something out, not need any support or help, and do what they need to do very quickly. So that should be a huge priority across the board for every organization. And then we have AI thrown into the mix. Now, in my world in marketing, AI is having a huge impact already, and I'm actually pretty excited about some of the things that AI is able to do in regards to automating so many annoying manual tasks that marketers do behind the scenes and freeing up time to really talk to customers and be more strategic and spend time understanding the market.
Nice. I was wondering about that, how AI was playing into the marketing world. I find myself, double checking my copy when I'm writing copy against it. I tried to ask Chat GPT the other day the favorite Jesus Lizard album. It's a band from the 90s, and AI ChatGPT couldn't come up with an answer. He gave me other people's answers, but couldn't give me his own. I'm already gendering ChatGPT. Forgive me on that. I always think I'm talking to a bro, but no, that's really neat to see how marketing is getting affected like everything else by AI. It really seems like this is the year of that. Now, we haven't talked a little bit about podcasts. Now, when I first saw you, the biggest thing was your podcast footprint was huge, and you continue to keep that rolling forward. Within the conversations we've had so far about print, where does podcast fit into your overall marketing formula?
And I'll going back to the AI comment, I'll throw out a couple recommendations for you in the audience. So something I would recommend trying is Claude, Claude, and you can sign up for a free account. At some point when you use enough words or characters, it'll kick into the paid, but you can at least get started with it. And it allows you to produce content that in my mind is much more human and sounds more like a person. When you use ChatGPT, I feel like sometimes it sounds very robotic and kind of not like a person. Claude, I think you can make your content sound much more like a person. You can give it prompts and have more personality come through. So would recommend that to you and anyone else who's wanting to use some more AI tools. The other tool that a friend of mine, Leslie, recommended, it's called Reggie.ai. And you take email sequences that you produce and you run it through their platform, and it ranks it on a scale of 0 to 100. So 100 being absolutely perfect, you should send it as is. 0 being this is terrible, how dare you send it. And it'll give you all the things to improve with your email before you send it. So it might say your title's too long, change this word, or in the body of your email, it'll point things out that typically don't perform well in emails, and then it gives you recommendations. So I don't send, and my team, when we were using it, any email that has less than a 90% rating through Reggie AI.
Nice.
So,
I also noticed that ChatGPT has no sense of humor. Every time I have it correct my
yeah,
passages,
it's such a
it kills all
snooze
the.
fest.
Yeah, it's
It's like
terrible.
have some exactly. So I think you in particular, because you're kind of funny and you're quirky like me, I think you might enjoy Claude. So
Cool.
check that out. So podcasting. So I think that one of the ways to reach your ICP and persona is by creating video content and not just having the written word like we talked about earlier. I think it's important to let someone see you, watch your hands gestures, hear your voice, and listen to you talk about your thoughts and viewpoints. It's also a great avenue to interview experts. And one of the things I really like to do is host shows where I bring experts on and have them talk about a specific subject matter or expertise. So throughout my career, I've been a big fan of LinkedIn live shows. There are systems like StreamYard that are integrated with LinkedIn and other socials, and you can go live and interview and or talk about certain subject matters, and it allows people to connect with you in a different way. Also, it gives you a lot of great content to then repurpose. So you can take bits of what was discussed, put them in text only posts, you can create graphics, you can create carousels, you can take that and turn it into lots of different pieces. You can also do video shorts where you're taking the longer form and then breaking it up into smaller clips. So as part of that, podcasting has also been a part of my strategy. At Source Day, we launched a podcast that was specifically targeted at people working in direct materials in manufacturing. And I'd gone out to the market and assessed and found that there wasn't really a podcast in that space. So I thought there was room to try to have very, very niche specific content. Now, having a niche podcast, you may not get the views as you would like if you're talking about something more general like leadership or real estate. But the goal is that it's much more niche and you're going to be targeting a very, very specific persona that's going to be hyper focused on what you're talking about.
Right. Right. No, that's great. We always try to whittle down my interviews and videos into bits to try to get the smartest and most intelligent things I say. Fortunately, I never talk intelligent for more than 30 seconds, so we're able to get some really good sound
So we've
bites.
got a lot of Brad 30-second clips.
Yeah. 29, 28. It gets shorter and shorter as I get dumber and dumber over time. But let's talk a little bit about print marketing. I saw in your background you had some background with print, and print's kind of a warm place in my family. I have some extended family members that run a print shop, and in a world where digital marketing is always on everybody's mind, their print shop is growing and expanding. So it's going against what you would think to be the base trend. It seems that there are still a lot of digital options available, and I'm absolutely lamenting election year, not because of any of my political predilections, just the fact that I don't want my mail box stuffed with so much junk this year. But hey, what are we going to do about that? The print people are going to, have another 4 years to float the boat. But given your experience of print-based marketing, telling me about the future of print and where it might play in a marketing campaign.
Yeah, so the reason print is such a big part of my background was when I was selling marketing procurement software, a big part of our solution was the print piece,
Mm.
allowing organizations to set up multiple print suppliers, to run RFPs or RFQs, to competitively look at pricing, to manage supplier performance, to track suppliers through scorecarding, to manage diversity and some other niche qualifications or certifications that certain suppliers or certain customers required. So that was a big part of the software that I sold in the first part of my career. It actually makes me laugh thinking about it. So when we would go to conferences, I'm a huge believer in wearing something shocking to really stand out and build a brand and start conversations. And so I went on Amazon and ordered everyone on our team newspaper print clothing. So whenever we went to conferences, we wore newspaper print. So I have a section in my closet still, my newspaper print wardrobe. So leggings, skirts, jackets. And I still remember us walking around trade shows or conferences decked out in newspaper print. And I cannot tell you how many people came up and asked, what's the newspaper print? What does your company do? Is kind of a good conversation starter. So when you asked me about print, the first thing that came to mind was my newspaper print outfits.
Mm.
So when I was more involved in the print space, I really kind of pivoted out of it a few years ago, but I would say there was a big shift in towards more focus on packaging. So a lot of the print suppliers that were set up in our platform per who our customers were using, we saw more print plants investing in packaging software and packaging equipment because more companies were pivoting online and there was less focus on retail establishments and more focused on people being able to purchase online, which means you need more packaging to be able to deliver to the customer. And if it's a luxury brand, a big part of it is the wow experience, right? It's when you open up the package, is it memorable? Am I going to take a picture? Am I going to make a video? And am I going to post that on social and help with our word of mouth marketing? So that was one. I would say another big focus was around sustainable packaging. So I remember there was a company that was testing out packaging made out of mushrooms. And IKEA was one of the companies testing it. So you were supposed to, quote, buy your product or your furniture, unpackage your item, and then take that and put it in your compostable. And in theory, the packaging was supposed to disappear. So it was an example of something that just really stood out to me in the sustainability space. So packaging in general and then sustainable packaging were two kind of big trends in print. I would also say focus on personalization. So as we become a brand and we have a face and human behind what we're selling, being able to really customize what we printed. For example, if I buy a Mercedes, and Mercedes is going to try to market to me, they may send me something in the mail that says, "Hey, Sarah, we have a new Mercedes available and they may have some information that's very personal and specific to me. What does that make me as the customer think? Wow, they really care. They did their research. So that being able to, as a printer, print one-offs or incorporate files or data to be able to do more personalization,
Mhm.
I think it was also a trend that I was noticing.
Nice. Is there a point where that personalization becomes too personal, where you start getting the creep out factor?
I guess you could say that for anything like, ooh, this is so creepy. Like I buy a pair of Uggs and then 1 second later, I'm getting all the Ugg ads online. I guess the same could be said. I personally was never involved with something where I thought, oh my gosh, that's like too
Mm,
creepy, too
right.
personal. A lot of it's around consumer habits.
Mm,
So I love this brand of sparkling water. So they may do research and know that guava is my favorite flavor. They may send me something that says, hey, Sarah, we know you love guava. Here's 20% off your next order.
right. Nice, nice. I like the idea of alternate packaging. I had a guy who put a burning paper bag on my doorstep, and when I tried to call the police, they said it was lumpy mail. So I don't know what was going on there, but I like the idea of being decked out to the conferences and the trade shows. My marketing people, I'm sure, are watching right now, and they're going to have me in like we're cloud services, so they're going to have me in like a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, but they're going to try to
Brad,
make it look
Brad the
cloudy.
Cloud.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to be this big, bumpy cloud guy, maybe bump off my competitors, knock over their booth accidentally, just blame it on the suit. All kinds of ideas here that are fomenting out of that. I like that. So let me kind of, as we wrap up the hour here, what looks to be the future for Sarah Scudder? Where do your curiosities reside within the supply chain world? Where do you see that taking you?
Yeah. So since I've spent my entire career in supply chain and procurement, I'm planning to stay in the industry. My passion has been more on the tech side. So probably another procure tech play where I can really help build a brand, create visibility, help go to market strategy, really hone in personas and ICP and help with messaging to make sure the company is producing content and getting it in front of the right eyeballs at the right time. I spent my last couple years in Austin and still have residency there, bouncing back and forth more between Austin and the Bay Area. So that's been kind of fun to pick and say, oh, there's going to be really crappy weather here for a month. So I'm gonna head to Cali or I'm gonna head somewhere else. So, and then lots more traveling. I was able to fit in a few trips already. Booked a trip to Australia in June, which will be my very, very first time going to visit family before they age out and aren't able to have visitors anymore. So I don't know. Lots of unknowns still, and figuring out what I'm going to do next. But definitely plan on staying in the industry.
Awesome, awesome. Australia. I have family in Australia. My only recommendation is shake out your shoes before you put them on. That's the recommendation that I've heard. That's about all the wisdom I can give you there.
Well, I am not going to be the one driving. I already don't like driving in the US, but having to drive on the other side of the road, absolute not, forget it. And I'm even nervous crossing the street. The cars are coming from the opposite direction. So I'm going to have to figure out all that navigation stuff before we go.
Right. Here in Wisconsin, we're just figuring out roundabouts. The idea of taking a roundabout on the wrong side, I don't even go there. I'm going to
I
entirely.
agree. I don't know if roundabouts actually help with traffic. We have a new one that was put in here, like 5 or 10 minutes from our house, and I question the amount of accidents I've seen from the roundabout. I actually wonder if it's doing much good.
Right. They certainly test my G-force tolerance if I hit them too fast. I have a bad habit of that. But all right. Well, so that said, let's wrap this up. And I want to thank first Sarah. Thank you for joining us today. Great conversation. Really enjoy getting to talk shop with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. For those that want to connect, I would say LinkedIn is probably my main social platform. So you can look for Sarah Scudder, and I post content every single day around supply chain and procurement and manufacturing in the ERP space. So happy to connect there.
Awesome. And to our audience, I want to thank you for joining us today as well. And so a version of this with links to Sarah will be uploaded in due course to both our LinkedIn and our YouTube channels. We hope to conduct more of these discussions with leaders in the business community in the weeks and months to come. And with that, I hope you have a great day and a great weekend to follow that. And thank you, Sarah.